Hi there, my name is Kim and these are the Wayrider Chronicles, my alternative look at current affairs. Hi there everybody, today I'm going to talk about online news, specifically how we all get it, and yes, it's a very hot button, as they call it, topic, because we are in the midst of a very busy election year in numerous countries. India is going on, South Africa, of course. The UK will be coming soon. They haven't announced it, but it will. And especially after what will happen today. And of course the Americans. What's provoked this particular video is two publications, or two online publications from virtually opposite sides of the world. One is from an Australian online newspaper called The New Daily, and the other one is an email newsletter published by a person called Molly White, who is a very able and detailed and very interesting critic of the whole cryptocurrency situation, or the whole crypto world situation, plus other internet situations. Let's start with the Aussies first. As you, or as some people have probably seen, there were two stabbing incidences in Greater Sydney. Well, one was in Sydney, one was outside in Greater Sydney, in the past couple of weeks. There's been issues with it, this particular, the way it was reported on the internet. The first one occurred in a place called Bondi Junction, which is a big mall leading down to famous Bondi Beach, not far from there, where nothing to do with terrorism, you can all look it up on the news, a maniac decided to go around stabbing people. This was filmed, as is the want these days. As soon as something happens in public, everybody pulls out their phones and starts filming it, and uploaded immediately to social media. The same took place where there was actually a live feed where a clergyman of a particular sect, Christian sect in Western Sydney, was stabbed while he was preaching. This live feed was also, obviously, went live on the internet. Regarding X, the old name, or the new name, sorry, for Twitter, the Australian government asked X to remove these live feeds, or not the live feed, but these explicit feeds showing, or these explicit videos showing stabbing and what have you, basically stabbing. And Elon Musk, the owner of X, said that this was censorship and he wasn't going to do it, and basically told the Australians to go and get lost. So this particular online newspaper called The New Daily in Australia published a sort of rebuttal of his attitude and the way the X refused to remove these, or censor, which we can call it censorship, so they were taking down information that was there, or they would have taken down information that was there. The rebuttal was done by an actual MP who was a journalist. And her point of view was that when she was a journalist, she used an example, which I presume was some really nice typhoon, sorry, not typhoon, it would have been a cyclone, probably up in Darwin, where she must have been covering it because there were bodies dangling from the electricity lines and death and destruction everywhere. These images were not published. Her point of view is that journalists will publish certain key images. We look back at the Vietnam War There have been a number of key images, but they don't publish willy-nilly anything for what is commonly referred to as gratuitous violence. Even though we see it every day in every movie that you ever watch, it's not, that is supposed to remain in the fantasy, and that's a different subject. I actually don't agree with that. There's enough violence on films, which at some stage, anyway, not going to go there. So her point was that was a justification for the Australians to request, or the Australian government, sorry, to request to Elon Musk and X, to remove these images. Then we go all the way to the other side of the world. I'm not sure where she lives, Molly White. I think it might be California, but I'm not sure. I have no idea. Her newsletter is called Citation Needed. Citation Needed. And her latest email newsletter was We Can Have a Better Web. It's like everything Molly writes about, it's very long-winded. I don't have an issue with that, but some people would do. And I think that is an issue for lots of people reading who should be reading real news. They just can't be bothered. Her point, one of the thrusts of this email is that too many people these days will get all their news and information from social media. She cites a guy called Tom Eastman. I don't know who he is, but anyway, I suppose I could look him up, but I haven't bothered. Who did say, or has once said, that the web has degenerated into 5 huge sites, with 4 of them being basically copies of the other ones. So in this email, in this email newsletter, she goes on to point out that we could have a better web, and goes through exhaustively what was the internet when it first started, sort of like beautiful blank white room which you could wander around and look at stuff, to what it's become today for many people, destinations which locks you in. Meta, Facebook, and all the meta companies, Instagram, WhatsApp, etc. Google, search, because let's face it, there's only really Google to search. If you know anybody who actually uses Bing or another search engine to look up something on the internet, and that search function has degenerated into paid advertising. So when you put in to Google, find me something, hotel and whatever, if that's what you're looking for, the first 10 results, or the first 5 results will be paid results. Etc., etc. How everybody has locked into, they either get the information from these 4 or 5 sites: Meta, Google, Twitter, Instagram, and maybe 1 or 2 others. I would agree, and coming back to that reference about Molly White's, the length of her newsletter, a lot of people just can't be bothered. The whole premises of Twitter when it started, back in 2000 and whenever, was to have to condense your information down into 134 characters or whatever it was, which we all realize that a lot of people have what used to be called the attention span of a gnat or a spider or whatever it was. I can't remember what the Americans use as their illustration for people who have very short attention spans. Basically lazy. I'll give you an example. Take those 2 examples of censorship, and the web is not what it used to be, and everybody's locked into looking at looking at their news from different sources. I agree with both of those points of view that the Australian is talking about that some sort of self-censorship should be allowed to take place, as it always has done, for the simple reason that a lot of people don't want to see blood and guts all over the place, or nasty images. They don't mind reading about them, because there's an imagination, but they don't want to be confronted with reality. That's a different issue in itself. And that we shouldn't be, the web can be a better place, or was a better place before, because it was not controlled by 4 or 5 big conglomerates. Agree. So, but what has given us today, or what I do, and I'm going to read to you now, a list of news sources that I access nearly on a daily basis. Not all of them on a daily basis, but I would say over a week I'll be looking at all of these news sources. So on a regular basis, I am reading articles from the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, CNBC Financial News Channel, they have a website, to a lesser degree, the South African Daily Maverick, Politico, the European edition, Semaphore, American online newsletter, or news publication, sorry, Il Post Italia, which is, again, an online-only Italian newsletter, in Italian, unfortunately, for other people. The Local, which is an online, actually Swedish-based online European newsletter in English. I usually read these, they have editions of all European countries. I usually read the Swiss, the Italian, and the general European sections on usually a daily basis. There's a couple of local online newspapers that I will read the main headlines. Then there's Wired Magazine, TechMem, Gizmodo, a new one which I picked up called Electrek, which is about electric cars and batteries and everything. It's quite interesting. Bloomberg News, of course. In Switzerland, come back to the majors. We've got NZZ, the Neue Zürcher Zeitung, or the new Zurich newspaper. I read that. I don't read German, but it's very easy to read stuff in foreign languages these days. I use the IM Translator, which is an app in the a plugin, not an app, a plugin in the Firefox browser that automatically translates articles for you. They use Google and Bing machine translation. Then we've got the FT, the London Financial Times, The Economist, Fortune magazine via their extremely useful free email newsletters, which is on a broad range of usually financial subjects, Slate magazine, the UK Spectator magazine, the Australian New Daily, which I cited originally, an internet-only newspaper. There's the New Zealand Herald, and yes, the old favourite, CNN, BBC, Al Jazeera, and Reuters. Those last 3 are freely available online, but actually I don't read them that much because their stories tend to be quite bland, and their reporting is sort of similar. What the point is in reading that huge list, which is very extensive list of publications, is that they're all available online. Sure, I don't have subscriptions to all of them. There's no way I'm going to pay for subscriptions to all of them. I actually have subscription to 2. All the other ones are available to read headlines and introductory articles. You can read them. And a lot of them are free. So what the point I'm making is that whereas the Australians are talking about a degree of censorship, actually, as far as I'm concerned, they are dreaming. You cannot censor stuff on the internet. It's impossible. Even the Chinese, who have the Great Wall of China, find it very difficult to completely censor anything of the whole internet. They try very hard, and they're very good at it, but they find it very difficult. However, I do agree that the journalists involved in those type of situations should be able to self-censor. If they decide not to publish something, that's up to them. Problem is that these days the competition to publish stuff will, if it is not published by them, it's published by somebody else. Very complicated story. The other point, going over to America, about Molly White and her, the internet, the web can be a better place. I agree, but I take the example that I've cited before, that if a person is only getting their news from Facebook or Twitter, there's something wrong with you. And I actually think you're just lazy. I think, as I said, I just think people are inherently lazy. And you can read in-depth articles and the other reason why I cited all those publications, because those are people who are trained, those articles are written by trained journalists who have progressed from, they started off, you just don't start writing like somebody on Facebook and say, oh, I know what they were doing this, and saying that that person is right against the other person who had a burning desire to become a journalist when he was at school, and they were good enough and articulate enough in their writing, in their composition, and all that work that has to go into when they were at school and when they went to university, bringing that passion for news and the ability to write, to analyze, write, and communicate what's going on into a job which they do for many, many years, a senior reporter on a big publication may have 10, 15 years experience, and saying, oh, that guy in the New York Times, he doesn't know what he's talking about, but that other guy who's just posted on Twitter, and he's from some godforsaken place in somewhere, he knows he's right. And the other guy he doesn't know what he's talking about, and the New York Times reporter doesn't know what he's talking about, and the other guy does. Seriously? What's wrong with you people? That's like, as there was an ad in the South African Daily Maverick, that's like, do you go to the gardener to get your hair cut? No, you don't. You go to the barber to get your hair cut. You go to the gardener to get your grass cut. There are two different things, different types of ability, etc., etc. So that is my point. Threefold. These days, you can get access, or we have got access to vast amounts of information, which you as a person need to make the effort to distill that information, read it, and not be lazy, read it correctly, get the competing points of view from one publication of experienced journalists and another publication of experienced journalists, and use that information to try and understand what is happening in whatever the big event of the moment is. People who don't do that and rely on social media for their news, frankly, I just think they're lazy, and they're ill-informed, and they will always stay ill-informed. I believe that because of the volume and the access of information we've got, good, solid, well understood, well researched information, that any person who feels that or uses social media to try and understand what's going on in the world you got screws loose and you're wasting your time. See you guys.